Leo had been looking forward to this day for weeks. The amusement park was his favorite place in the world, a magical land of roller coasters, cotton candy, and endless fun. At 10 years old, he was finally tall enough to ride the biggest attractions, and he couldn't wait to feel the rush of the wind against his face as the roller coaster sped through loops and twists. His parents had promised him a day full of laughter and excitement, and Leo was determined to make the most of it. The sun was shining brightly as they arrived at the park. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, the hum of rides, and the occasional scream of delight from a thrill-seeker. Leo's heart raced with anticipation as he clutched his mother's hand, his small fingers intertwined with hers. His father walked beside them, carrying a backpack filled with snacks and water bottles. They were the perfect picture of a happy family, ready to create unforgettable memories. Leo's favorite part of the park was the roller coaster section. The towering structures loomed above them, their tracks twisting and turning like serpents. He could already hear the distant rumble of the rides and the excited shrieks of the passengers. As they approached the entrance to the biggest roller coaster, Leo's excitement reached its peak. He could hardly contain himself as he bounced on the balls of his feet, eager to get in line. "Can I listen to my song while we wait?" Leo asked, pulling out his headphones from his pocket. He had a favorite song that always pumped him up, and he wanted to listen to it before the ride. His mother smiled and nodded, giving him permission. Leo quickly put on the headphones and pressed play, the familiar beat filling his ears. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over him, completely absorbed in his own world. When he opened his eyes, he realized he had let go of his mother's hand. It was just for a second, but when he turned to look for her, she was gone. His father was nowhere to be seen either. Leo's heart skipped a beat as he glanced around, his eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of his parents. The park was still bustling with people, but to Leo everything suddenly felt different. The cheerful music and bright lights seemed distant, almost surreal. His chest tightened as panic began to set in. "Mom! Dad!" Leo called out, his voice trembling. He took a few steps forward, pushing through the crowd, but there was no response. His parents had vanished without a trace. Leo's breathing quickened, and he felt a lump forming in his throat. He tried to stay calm, telling himself that they were probably just a few steps away, but deep down, he knew something was wrong. The minutes turned into hours as Leo wandered aimlessly through the park. He retraced his steps, hoping to find his parents waiting for him at the roller coaster entrance, but they weren't there. He asked strangers if they had seen a man and woman matching his parents' descriptions, but no one had. The once magical park now felt like a maze, each turn leading him further into confusion and fear. As the sun began to set, the park's lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the ground. Leo's legs were tired, and his stomach growled with hunger. He had never felt so alone. Tears welled up in his eyes as he sat down on a bench, clutching his knees to his chest. He didn't know what to do or where to go. The thought of being lost forever crossed his mind, and he couldn't hold back the tears any longer. Just as he was about to give up hope, a kind voice broke through his despair. "Hey, are you okay?" Leo looked up to see a woman standing in front of him, her face filled with concern. Beside her was a man and a young girl who looked to be around Leo's age. They were a family, and they had noticed Leo sitting alone, looking lost and frightened. Leo wiped his tears and nodded, though he wasn't sure if he was really okay. The woman knelt down to his level, her eyes soft and reassuring. "Are you lost?" she asked gently. Leo nodded again, his voice caught in his throat. The man exchanged a worried glance with the woman before speaking. "We'll help you find your parents. Don't worry." Relief washed over Leo as the family took him under their wing. They bought him a bottle of water and a hot dog, making sure he was fed and hydrated. The young girl, whose name was Emily, stayed close to Leo, offering him comforting words and even sharing her cotton candy with him. For the first time since he had lost his parents, Leo felt a glimmer of hope. The family took Leo to the park's security office, where they reported him as a lost child. The security team immediately began searching for his parents, but as the hours passed, there was no sign of them. Leo's heart sank as he realized that his parents were truly gone. The kind family, seeing his distress, offered to take him home with them for the night. They promised to keep looking for his parents and to take care of him until they were found. As Leo climbed into their car, he couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. He was grateful for the family's kindness, but he was also scared and confused. Where were his parents? Why had they left him? And would he ever see them again? These questions swirled in his mind as the car pulled away from the park, leaving behind the place that had once been his favorite, now tainted by fear and uncertainty. Leo's life had changed overnight. What was supposed to be a day of joy and excitement had turned into a nightmare, and now he found himself living with a family he had never met before. The family who had found him at the amusement park, Emily, her parents, Sarah and Mark, had opened their home to him without hesitation. They were kind, patient, and did everything they could to make Leo feel safe. But no matter how much they tried to comfort him, Leo couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness. He missed his parents terribly. The first few days were the hardest. Leo woke up every morning hoping it had all been a bad dream, only to realize that his parents were still gone. He would sit by the window staring out at the street, hoping to see them walking up the driveway, but they never came. Sarah and Mark did their best to keep him busy, taking him to the park, playing board games, and even helping him with his homework. Emily, who was only a year older than Leo, became his constant companion. She shared her toys, her books, and even her favorite snacks with him. Slowly, Leo began to feel a little less alone. Still, the questions haunted him. Why had his parents disappeared? Had they left him on purpose? The thought made his stomach churn. He couldn't believe they would abandon him, but the longer they were gone, the harder it was to hold on to hope. The police had assured him that they were doing everything they could to find his parents, but as the days turned into weeks, the case grew colder. There were no leads, no clues, and no answers. Meanwhile, Sarah and Mark had grown attached to Leo. They saw how much he was hurting and did everything they could to help him heal. They enrolled him in a new school, bought him clothes and toys, and even celebrated his birthday with a small party. Emily, who had always wanted a sibling, treated Leo like her little brother. She taught him how to ride a bike, helped him with his math homework, and even let him borrow her favorite stuffed animal when he had trouble sleeping at night. Leo was grateful for their kindness, but deep down, he still longed for his real family. One evening, as Leo sat at the dinner table with Sarah, Mark, and Emily, the phone rang. Sarah answered it, her expression growing serious as she listened to the person on the other end. When she hung up, she turned to Leo with a mix of excitement and concern. "That was the police," she said. "They have some news about your parents." Leo's heart raced. "Are they okay? Did they find them?" Sarah hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "They don't know for sure yet, but they think your parents might have been kidnapped." Leo's eyes widened in shock. Kidnapped? But why? Who would do that? Mark placed a reassuring hand on Leo's shoulder. "We don't know all the details yet, but the police are working on it. They think someone might have taken your parents at the amusement park, right when you got separated." The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Leo remembered letting go of his mother's hand to put on his headphones. He remembered turning around and not seeing them. He had always assumed they had walked away, but now he realized they might have been taken against their will. The thought made him feel both relieved and terrified. Relieved because it meant they hadn't abandoned him, but terrified because they were in danger. Over the next few days, the police worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. They reviewed security footage from the amusement park and interviewed witnesses. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. On the day Leo got separated from his parents, a suspicious van had been seen near the park's entrance. The police believed that Leo's parents had been forced into the van and driven away. But why? And where were they now? As the investigation continued, Leo tried to stay strong. He focused on school, on his new friends, and on the family who had taken him in. But every night before he went to sleep, he would whisper a prayer for his parents, hoping they were safe and that they would come back to him soon. One afternoon, as Leo and Emily were playing in the backyard, Sarah called them inside. "Leo, the police are here. They want to talk to you." Leo's heart pounded as he walked into the living room. Two police officers were sitting on the couch, their faces serious but kind. One of them, a woman with short brown hair, smiled at Leo. "We have some good news," she said. "We think we've found your parents." Leo's eyes filled with tears. "Are they okay? Where are they?" The officer nodded. "They're safe. They were being held in a remote location, but we managed to track them down. They're on their way back now." Leo couldn't believe it. His parents were alive. They were coming home. He felt a wave of relief wash over him, but it was quickly followed by a surge of anger. Who had taken them? And why? The officer explained that Leo's parents had been kidnapped by a group of criminals who had mistaken them for someone else. It had been a case of mistaken identity, and once the kidnappers realized their mistake, they had no choice but to keep Leo's parents hidden. But thanks to a tip from a concerned citizen, the police had been able to locate them and bring them to safety. As Leo listened, he felt a mix of emotions. He was overjoyed that his parents were safe, but he was also angry at the people who had taken them away. Most of all, he was grateful to the family who had taken care of him during the darkest time of his life. He turned to Sarah and Mark, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he said, his voice trembling. "Thank you for everything." Sarah hugged him tightly. "We're just glad your parents are safe. You've been so brave, Leo." That night, as Leo lay in bed, he thought about everything that had happened. He thought about the day he got lost, the family who had found him, and the long weeks of waiting and wondering. He thought about his parents, who had been through so much but were finally coming home. And he thought about the future, about the day he would see them again and feel their arms around him. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. His parents were alive, and soon they would be together again. That was all that mattered. The day Leo had been waiting for finally arrived. It had been weeks since the police had located his parents, and now they were coming home. Leo could hardly contain his excitement as he sat on the couch, fidgeting nervously with the hem of his shirt. Sarah, Mark, and Emily were with him, their faces filled with anticipation and joy. The house was filled with a sense of celebration, but Leo's heart was racing. He couldn't wait to see his parents again, to feel their arms around him, to hear their voices. The doorbell rang, and Leo jumped to his feet. His legs felt like jelly as he walked to the door, his heart pounding in his chest. Sarah opened the door, and there they were, his mom and dad standing on the doorstep looking tired but smiling. Leo's breath caught in his throat as he stared at them, his eyes filling with tears. "Mom." "Dad," he whispered, his voice trembling. His parents stepped inside, and in an instant, they were kneeling on the floor, their arms wrapped tightly around him. Leo buried his face in his mother's shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. His father's hand rested on his back, warm and reassuring. For the first time in what felt like forever, Leo felt safe. He felt whole. "We're so sorry, Leo," his mother said, her voice choked with emotion. "We never meant to leave you. We thought about you every single day." "We love you so much," his father added, his voice thick with tears. "We're so proud of you for being so brave." Leo couldn't speak. He just held on to them, afraid that if he let go, they might disappear again. But they were real. They were here, and they were never going to leave him again. Sarah, Mark, and Emily watched the reunion with tears in their eyes. They had grown to love Leo during his time with them, and seeing him reunited with his parents filled their hearts with joy. Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek and smiled. "Welcome home," she said softly. Leo's parents looked up at Sarah and Mark, their gratitude evident in their eyes. "Thank you," Leo's father said, his voice breaking. "Thank you for taking care of our son. We can never repay you for what you've done." Sarah shook her head. "There's no need to thank us. We're just glad your family is back together." The next few hours were a blur of emotions. Leo's parents told him about their ordeal, how they had been taken by mistake, how they had been held in a remote location, and how they had never stopped thinking about him. They explained that the kidnappers had realized their mistake, but couldn't let them go without risking exposure. It had been a terrifying experience, but they had held on to the hope that they would see Leo again. Leo listened intently, his heart aching for everything his parents had been through. but he was also filled with pride. They had survived. They had fought to come back to him, and now they were here, together, as a family. As the day turned into evening, Leo's parents thanked Sarah and Mark again and again. They promised to stay in touch, to never forget the kindness they had been shown. Leo hugged Emily tightly, promising to visit her soon. "You're like my sister now," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. Emily smiled and hugged him back. "You're my brother," she replied. When it was time to go, Leo felt a pang of sadness. He had grown to love the family who had taken him in, and saying goodbye was harder than he had expected. But he knew it wasn't really goodbye. They would always be a part of his life, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there were people who cared. As Leo walked out the door with his parents, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. The nightmare was over. His family was whole again. And as they drove away, Leo looked out the window at the stars, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the people who had helped him through the hardest time of his life. That night, as Leo lay in his own bed for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of contentment he hadn't felt in a long time. His parents were just down the hall, and the house was filled with the familiar sounds and smells of home. He closed his eyes, a smile on his face, and drifted off to sleep, knowing that no matter what happened, he would always have his family by his side. If you enjoyed this content, please leave a like and drop a comment below, letting us know where you're listening from. It helps this channel grow more than you know. Have a nice day.